Throughout human history, we have witnessed moments that redefine our understanding of tragedy. Catastrophes so profound, they alter the course of nations and remain etched in collective memory for generations. What separates an accident from a disaster? A disaster from a catastrophe? Is it the number of lives claimed, the preventability of the event, or perhaps the nightmarish methods of dying? Today, we're going to take you deeper than ever before into three of history's most devastating calamities. One born from nature's unbridled fury, one forged by human negligence, and one where both forces conspired with devastating consequences. I must warn you, what you're about to witness isn't for the faint of heart. These are stories where survival meant enduring the unendurable, where rescue sometimes came too late, and where the line between life and death was measured in inches or seconds. As always, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The January 18th, 1977. A Tuesday morning like any other in Sydney, Australia. Dawn broke over the Blue Mountains as commuters kissed loved ones goodbye, clutching coffee cups and newspapers, their minds already on the workday ahead. At 6:09 a.m. precisely, the crowded Blue Mountains commuter train departed Mount Victoria Station, bound for Sydney. Conductor James Wells made his usual announcements as the diesel locomotive pulled nearly 500 passengers, office workers, students, families, in aging wooden carriages along tracks that had served the community for decades. But beneath those wheels lay a deadly secret. Decades of budget cuts, postponed maintenance, and bureaucratic negligence had turned the railway into what one engineer would later call a ticking time bomb. The bomb was about to detonate. At 8:10 a.m., as the train approached Granville Station, something went catastrophically wrong. The locomotive suddenly derailed at high speed, violently lurching off the tracks and slamming into the support columns of the Bold Street Bridge overhead. What happened next would haunt rescuers for decades. 570 tons of concrete and steel came thundering down onto the packed passenger carriages. The impact was so severe that carriages 3 and 4 were crushed to less than half their original height in an instant. First responders arrived to find a scene from their worst nightmares, a twisted metal coffin entombing hundreds. The wooden carriages had splintered under the weight, impaling some victims and trapping others between jagged metal and concrete. What began was Australia's largest rescue operation since World War II. Over 1,300 emergency personnel worked in shifts for 3 days straight. But the Granville disaster had a particularly cruel twist waiting, one that would multiply the tragedy exponentially. When a body part is crushed for hours, toxins build up in the isolated tissue. When that pressure is suddenly released, medical professionals call it crush syndrome, a silent, invisible killer. As victims were freed from the wreckage, the sudden release of pressure allowed deadly levels of potassium and myoglobin to surge into their bloodstreams, causing cardiac arrest within minutes of rescue. By the time the rescue operation concluded, 83 people had lost their lives, including children as young as 8. But the toll would later rise to 84, when medical examiners made a heartbreaking discovery. One victim had been pregnant, her unborn child becoming the disaster's final casualty. The subsequent investigation revealed a web of failures so extensive it shocked the nation. Tracks worn to dangerous levels, with maintenance repeatedly deferred. Inspection reports ignored by railway officials. The Bold Street Bridge had been modified, making it 3 times heavier than its original design. Warning signs of track degradation, noted months earlier, but deemed non-urgent. The public outrage was immediate. The Granville disaster fundamentally transformed Australia's approach to railway safety, with over 70 major reforms implemented nationwide. But for the families of the 84 victims, these changes came too late. Every year on January 18th, They gather at the memorial built where the bridge once stood. The plaque reads simply, "They went to work and never came home." But as catastrophic as human error can be, nature's fury can prove even more devastating. And in 1783, the Earth itself would unleash a nightmare beyond imagination. Iceland today, a land of breathtaking beauty, geothermal wonders, and some of the happiest people on Earth. But beneath this tranquil landscape lies a volatile truth. Iceland sits directly atop the mid-Atlantic ridge, where tectonic plates tear apart, creating one of Earth's most active volcanic regions. This unremarkable-looking crack in the Earth once brought humanity to its knees. June 8th, 1783. After weeks of increasingly violent earthquakes, the Earth near Lakagigar quite literally tore open. What followed wasn't just an eruption, it was 8 continuous months of hell on Earth. The Laki fissure didn't simply erupt. It ripped open a 16-mile-long wound in the planet's crust, spewing forth 42 billion tons of basaltic lava, enough to bury Manhattan Island under 820 feet of molten rock, 120 million tons of sulfur dioxide, more than all of today's global industrial emissions combined. 8 cubic kilometers of tephra, volcanic fragments that blocked out the sun for months. For the people of Iceland, the first effects were immediate and devastating. As lava consumed farms and villages, a deadlier threat emerged in the form of fluorine gas, a particularly cruel poison. The fluorine settled on grass, consumed by livestock. Within days, sheep and cattle across Iceland began displaying horrifying symptoms. Their teeth crumbled. Their bones grew brittle and shattered under their own weight. Some animals' jawbones dissolved completely while they were still alive, leaving them unable to eat, dying slowly of starvation. What followed was a famine so severe it would be remembered as the mist hardships. Crops withered under acid rain. Drinking water became poisoned. The few animals that survived couldn't produce milk. Within months, 20% of Iceland's human population, about 10,000 people, had perished from starvation, fluorine poisoning, or related diseases. Another 20% prepared to evacuate the island entirely. It was during this apocalypse that Reverend John performed what many consider a miracle. As lava approached his church where villagers had gathered for what they believed would be their final prayer, he delivered what became known as the Fire Sermon. Witnesses claimed the lava flow mysteriously divided around the church, sparing all inside. But Laki's devastation was just beginning. While Iceland suffered, the eruption's effects were going global, in a way no one could have imagined. The sulfur dioxide cloud, now known as the Laki haze, drifted across the northern hemisphere, creating a fog so thick and toxic, it changed world history. In England, summer temperatures plummeted by nearly 5 degrees Fahrenheit. The sun appeared blood red through the haze. Crops failed under unnatural frost, even in August. The acid fog proved especially deadly to the vulnerable. Hospital records from the period show a surge in pulmonary deaths. An estimated 23,000 British citizens suffocated from respiratory failure in the summer of 1783 alone, as the toxic cloud continued its journey. In France, crop failures intensified poverty and hunger, fueling the social tensions that would erupt in the 1800s, French Revolution just 6 years later. Across Europe, the winter of 1783 to 84 became one of the most severe in recorded history, with temperatures dropping to catastrophic levels. In North America, the Mississippi River froze at New Orleans, and ice was reported floating in the Gulf of Mexico. In Egypt, unusually low Nile flooding caused famine. In Japan, the cloud exacerbated an already devastating famine, helping push the death toll to nearly 1 million. The Laki eruption eventually ended in February 1784, having killed an estimated 6 million people worldwide, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in human history. Today, Iceland's volcanoes are among the most monitored on Earth, but experts warn it's not a question of if, but when another Lackey-scale eruption will occur. But while the Earth's fury is unstoppable, human tragedies at sea bring a different kind of horror. The special agony of seeing salvation so close, yet unreachable. This tranquil stretch of coastline near Cape Northumberland, Australia, belies a deadly secret. Beneath these waters lie treacherous reefs that have claimed hundreds of ships over centuries, but none so tragically as the SS Admella, a state-of-the-art iron steamship whose name derived from its route between Adelaide, Melbourne, and Launceston. Built in 1857, the Admella represented the pinnacle of maritime engineering. Iron-hulled, steam-powered, with watertight compartments specifically designed to prevent sinking. The shipping company advertised it as unsinkable, a claim that would prove ominously familiar in maritime history. August 5th, 1859. 113 souls boarded in Adelaide. Wealthy merchants, families relocating to Melbourne, gold miners seeking fortune, and a prized racehorse named Thoroughbred, valued at more than the annual salary of most passengers. But by dawn on August 6th, conditions had deteriorated dramatically. Heavy fog obscured visibility to mere yards, and Captain Hugh McEwen made a fateful decision. Rather than slow the vessel, he maintained speed, trusting his charts and experience. At 5 a.m., lookout James Miller spotted something that made his blood run cold, the white foam of waves breaking over reef directly ahead. It was too late. At full steam, the Admella crashed directly onto Carpenter Rocks, one of the most dangerous reef systems in Australian waters. The impact was catastrophic. The iron hull, supposedly impervious to such damage, split clean in three. Water flooded in, drowning the engine rooms within minutes, and killing those trapped below decks instantly. What remained of the ship settled precariously on the reef, tantalizingly close to shore, yet totally unreachable through the violent surf. And thus began what maritime historians call 8 of the cruelest days in seafaring history. Day 1. 89 survivors, including 5 women and 1 child, clung to the wreckage. The proximity to land proved psychological torture. Shore was visible, less than 100 yards away, yet currents and jagged rocks made swimming suicidal. First Officer Rochford and 2 seamen attempted to reach land with a makeshift raft and rope. The merciless surf dashed them against the rocks repeatedly. Rochford alone made it back to the wreck, his companions lost to the sea. Day 2. The worst torture began. Ships appeared on the horizon. The SS Bombay passed within clear view. The survivors screamed and waved clothing on sticks. The Bombay continued, its crew noticing nothing amiss. Nights brought new horrors. Temperature dropped to near freezing. The ocean's swells intensified, and in the moonlight, survivors could see the dark shadows circling beneath. Tiger sharks drawn by the bodies already claimed by the sea. By day 3, dehydration became the primary killer. No fresh water had survived the wreck. Some drank seawater, accelerating their demise. Others resorted to drinking their own urine. Each hour, another survivor lost strength and slipped into the waves. Many were too weak to even cry out as they fell. On day 4, crew members John Leach and Robert Knapman constructed a desperate plan, a makeshift raft, to attempt the 20-mile journey to Cape Northumberland Lighthouse. For 8 hours, the men battled currents, hypothermia, and exhaustion. By sheer miracle, they washed ashore, more dead than alive, and crawled to a nearby farm. But cruel fate intervened again. The lighthouse keeper, skeptical of the delirious men's tale, delayed sending word until morning. Precious hours lost. Days 5 through 7 brought a series of heartbreaking rescue failures. Boats launched from shore capsized in the surf. A steamship arrived but couldn't get close enough. Rescue rockets with lifelines fell short. Each failed attempt crushingly visible to the survivors, whose numbers dwindled hourly. Day 8. a lifeboat crew led by James Fawthrop finally reached the wreck after multiple attempts. What they found haunts Australian maritime history to this day. Of 113 souls who boarded in Adelaide, only 24 remained alive. Among them, just one woman, Jane Carpenter, who had watched her husband and child die days earlier. The final cruelty? Several survivors died within days of rescue, their bodies too damaged by exposure and dehydration to recover. Today, a memorial stands on the coastline overlooking the Admella wreck site. Local legend claims that on stormy nights, ghostly voices can be heard calling for help from the reef. The Admella disaster led to Australia's first dedicated maritime rescue service and a complete overhaul of coastal warning systems. But for the 89 souls lost, many of whom perished within sight of potential rescuers, these changes came far too late. Granville, Lockie, the Admella. Three disasters separated by time and circumstance, yet bound by common threads: the fragility of human life against forces both natural and man-made. These catastrophes, horrific as they were, fundamentally changed how we prepare for and respond to disasters. Modern engineering standards, volcanic monitoring networks, and maritime rescue protocols all bear the invisible fingerprints of lessons written in blood. But beyond physical monuments, the greatest legacy of these events may be the haunting question they force us to confront. Could they happen again? If you want to explore more historical catastrophes, smash that subscribe button. And if you know of other forgotten disasters that deserve their stories told, leave your suggestions in the comments below.